Hello, welcome back everyone. So what you see before you on the screen is a screen cap of a video that Three Arrows did recently. I know the title says Matt Walsh and how the Republicans lost, but there's something far more interesting in that podcast to me than that. And that is how Republican states have made legislation that has essentially caused harm to the trans community, particularly trans youth. And what he spells out in there, and it's a 50-minute long talk, and the link will be in the description below. And I encourage you to go and listen to it so you can find out what pieces of legislation are doing to undermine trans people and trans youth. Aside from trans and trans youth, what I'm about to talk about further in this video could also be applicable to the states that have outlawed women getting abortions. So after listening to Three Arrows podcast on this, where he really goes into how Republicans or right-leaning states, red states, have done increasing amounts passed increasing amounts of legislation that do increasing amounts of damage to the rights, liberties, and freedoms of trans people and trans youth, I realized that there was something very sinister in this, and it has to do with chronic pain patients. There's a thing called the PDMP and Narcotics that they use to score chronic pain patients and what they think to be a high potential of having substance use disorder, opiate use disorder, or what they perceive as drug-seeking behavior. And really, if you're a chronic pain patient, that's anything. Like, basically, if you're a chronic pain patient, you probably already have OUD, SUD, or drug-seeking behavior in your medical file. And, I mean, if you really want to get the full scale of what he talks about, what the red states do, what the right-leaning perspective does to trans and trans youth rights, liberties, and freedoms, really you should go and listen to the podcast. But I'm trying to draw trans people, I'm trying to draw their attention, or people who advocate for trans rights, I'm trying to draw their attention to this, like, hey, there's already something out there that can be used to cross state lines and track pretty much everything you do. And if you're an arbiter of, like, I think a lot of libertarians that watch my channel are going to find this horrifying as well. Did you know that we've known about this in the chronic pain community for a long time? We don't know how your Nartrax score is configured. They won't release that information, but we do know that law enforcement agencies have access to it. Well, we found the proof, and this is something that can be used against trans people, trans youth, or women who seek abortions. And so after watching it, this was the comment that I left in Three Arrows comment section. I said, "The government is intruding in on healthcare in general here in the U.S., not to detract from the subject of how they are treating trans youth, but chronic pain patients are being abandoned by the dozens. A company called RxSAS gave all authority forces access to a software program that allows even the police to view your medical records. Yes, this is true. A lot of people don't know this either, but as of 2016, chronic pain patient suicide rate has gone up about 400%. 170%. It gets worse. If you are an LGBTQ person who's also a chronic pain patient, they automatically label you as having a substance use disorder or opiate use disorder based on the notion that being LGBTQ as a mental illness. It's not. The likelihood of chronic pain patient abandonment as an LGBTQ person is very high. Getting disability in this country is a lot harder than most people think too. Sorry, I had some typos. There's also laws protecting companies from being sued for breaking ADA, American Disabilities Act, violations. So you're not guaranteed a job, disability, or medical care. The U.S. really sucks. Later, the subject of mastectomy comes up. They won't treat your pain very well these days. There's a clinic in Florida that does mastectomies and only gives what's called an interscalene brachial plexus nerve block. This is usually done with a local analgesia called Exparil. The problem with that is this particular nerve block numbs the arm, hand, shoulder, and neck, not the chest. To make matters worse, this nerve block only lasts for 4 hours, and that's it. Even worse still, they are doing this with mastectomies for breast cancer patients that have incurable, intractable chronic pain. These nerve blocks can cost as much as $3,000 a shot, even with insurance. As a chronic pain patient myself, I would recommend not doing that. You will be in so much pain for the whole procedure, it would be unbearable. I have evidence of this as well. Just so anyone who reads this is clear, this was to clear up people who are reading it in his, I am LGBTQ, all my subscribers already know I'm a homosexual. They already know that. They already know, you all already know I'm a chronic pain patient who advocates for trans rights, LGBTQ rights, for chronic pain patient rights, awareness, and all that sort of stuff. You guys already know that. And you already know I'm a gothic punk, but I put that in there. But as I was, the company called it, it's, all law enforcement agencies do have access to this software. And it's not just LGBTQ people that get targeted for this patient abandonment. They seem to really like to say that you're at higher risk of developing a substance use disorder, not only if you're LGBTQ based on mental illness status, but also if you're a person of color. There's a higher likelihood that you will be assessed as having being a high probability of developing a substance use disorder and patient abandonment. Also, if you're a woman, particularly a woman who has been sexually assaulted or the dreaded R word, raped. So you can't be honest with your doctor if you're a female who's a victim of sexual assault, because they will automatically red flag you as high risk of developing opiate use disorder, substance use disorder, or exhibiting drug-seeking behavior, and you are more likely to become an abandoned pain patient. So, unfortunately, you can't be honest with your doctor about that. But, yeah, that's true. And I'm about to back this up with facts. All right, so here's the proof of the opioid-free mastectomies that have left women to suffer this, I'm not sure how to say this, Pacura. Local surgeon enhances mastectomy patients recover with non-opioid options. This is what they use is the Exparil. There's information on that. That is the local analgesia that they use. And that's bupivacaine. Lasts 4 to 8 hours. It's more on the 4-hour end, not the 8-hour end. They do that to accommodate for different reactions to the drug. And here's some more information about Exparel. So that is a real thing right there. So I backed that up. Just wanted you to know that is a real thing. There is a place that does mastectomies. Will not give you any opioid medications after the mastectomy. All you get is the nerve block, which affects, like I said, I've had an interscalene brachial plexus nerve block myself for NTOS. It numbs the arm, hand, and shoulder. It does not numb the chest. And they are going to cut off someone's tit with this, not give them any pain meds, just the nerve block that only lasts for 4 hours for the arm, hand, and shoulder. Yeah, so there you go. It exists. All right, so this is really scary. This is the video. I will leave the link to this video in the description below. I got it set to a faster pace so we can get through this quicker, but you're going to see very quick how this is very scary.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Analytics to Fight Opioid Abuse Use Case at the SAS Global Forum 2020. My name is Shri Muru, and I am a systems engineer supporting our government business unit at SAS. I'm excited to talk to you all today and show you a demonstration of our analytical capabilities that have been tailored to help fight the opioid epidemic. Before we go into the demo, I will pass it to Dr. Steve Kearney to give us an overview of the problem at hand and the approach SAS has taken to help fight opioid abuse. Dr. Steve Kearney.
And one of the things that they don't really mention is that when they say the opiate epidemic, it confuses a lot of people in the public because this is not from prescription opioid medications. Prescription opioid medications are the safest opioids or opiates that you could possibly take because they're controlled and regulated by the FDA.
Thank you, Shri. Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Kearney, and I have the privilege to work with an exceptional team here at SAS and with all of you to solve some of the world's most challenging healthcare, life sciences, and government problems. Shri?
The real problem is with the illicit drugs, like the illegal drugs, are contaminated with fentanyl. And this is something they don't talk about very often, but that's what it is. It's the illegal supply is a contaminated supply with fentanyl. And it's not a global thing. It's a North American thing. It's just United States and Canada. Nowhere else in the world is doing this. It's just United States and Canada. Canada, it looks like they're going to turn around. There's an investigative journalist report that I can leave a link to. I'll have 3 links to an investigative journalist report revolving around this subject matter. They're quite long, but I'll leave the links there, 3 different ones. But in Vancouver, there's a clinic that opened up where Canada's starting to realize, well, the best approach to this is probably to replace the contaminated supply with a safe supply. So this medical place in Canada is offering medical grade heroin to people who have OUD, opiate use disorder. And this has eliminated a lot of their crime rates. Their crime rates have gone down drastically. Nobody is overdosed, and yeah, it seems to be working. So it looks like it's going to become a United States only thing.
She is one of those brilliant SAS colleagues that works tirelessly to make the world around her better every day, and I look forward to her demonstration of how to use analytics to fight against opioid abuse. As we deal with the current COVID-19 pandemic, there is also an epidemic that continues to rage across the U.S. and other parts of the world, the opioid epidemic. At SAS, we have been working with all the key stakeholders in this fight for years. Traditional or base SAS is used by every Department of Health and federal agency involved in this daunting problem, but many times it is with incomplete, latent data that is often in silos. In recent years, we are proud of the innovative solutions and partnerships that we have developed in this battle, and we had signs of improvement in 2019. However, many are concerned that the current state of our health system will erode the great strides that were made. The numbers before the 2019 improvements look something like this. More than 12,000 people were treated in ERs every day for opioid abuse and opioid overdoses. Now, with COVID-19, those patients are struggling to access treatment.
And the number on the opiate overdoses is highly suspect because they don't do a very good job at separating illicit overdoses, illicit fentanyl overdoses, and actual like prescription opioid overdoses are actually very, very minuscule and scant, but they like to throw them in the same category. So there's some question around some of the numbers on overdoses.
And many that were doing well now feel isolated and without resources. Also, more than 130 people died every day in 2018 from an opioid overdose, and it was estimated it could have been as high as 180 people per day. There is grave concern now what the new trends look like. There was a decrease in prescription opioid deaths, but unfortunately, there was a 10% increase in synthetic opioid deaths, like fentanyl. The majority of those that were using fentanyl received it through their transition from prescription drugs to heroin that now has become laced with fentanyl.
And that only makes up 3% of chronic pain patients who have been on long-term opioid therapy to treat their pain. Only roughly 2 or 3% actually do that. It's a very small percentage that do that go down the road of illicit.
The SAS approach promotes interoperability and combining data sources. It allows for a common data language and an analytic environment that promotes data-driven decision-making. Through the use of visualization, network analysis, risk scoring, and real-time alerts, this analytic environment utilizes AI and machine learning, along with the ability to develop or compare any model, including open source, to turn numerous disparate data sources through APIs and advanced data management into actionable data that can empower law enforcement and health officials to get the services to the people real-time and, most importantly, save lives.
And I don't think AI is very good at deciphering these metrics because it's too technical and doesn't take into consideration variances and nuance. And you see that it's at law enforcement agencies, and this is where it really starts to get scary.
Now, I will turn it over to Shri for our demonstration.
Thank you, Steve. Let's jump into the demo. This demo uses some publicly available data, along with some demo data, and represents information that may be collected by law enforcement and prescription drug monitoring programs. As Steve mentioned, combined...
The prescription drug monitoring programs is PDMP and Narcotics. We have tried to see if we could get a hold of Narcotics and what they put into it, but they've sealed it off from the public. So there's a Narcotics score assigned to anyone with pretty much a medical file, and you as a citizen do not have access to it, whatever it says. The PDMP, the prescription drug monitoring program, every state has some version of it, and we've always known that law enforcement had access to it, but we didn't know that it was on this level. This is really scary. Even my libertarian friends out there, I think, are going to have a problem with this. This is police state type stuff.
Data from multiple agencies helps us gain the most insight in tackling opioid abuse. I've already cleansed the data and prepared it in order to get it to the dashboard format you're seeing on the screen today. I've done this within the same SAS platform, and some of the steps I've taken include standardizing addresses and names, joining disparate data sets together, and removing duplicates across my data sets. We'll start by looking at an overview of this state along with some key values. Here you can see the number of fatal overdoses by county.
And keep in mind, this is accessible to law enforcement agencies nationwide, and this does cross state lines.
I also have the number of drug-related arrests for the entire state and naloxone administrations. The line chart below shows me fentanyl-related deaths in the yellow line and oxycodone-related deaths in the orange line. Let's jump into the next page for more details. This dashboard page is split in two. On the left-hand side, we'll have more law enforcement-focused insights, and on the right-hand side, more health and PDMP-revolved insights. In the middle, we can see the same map broken down by county for fatal overdoses, where Essex County has the highest. The next map underneath shows naloxone deployments, where Camden has the highest. And the last two maps are drug possession arrests and drug distribution arrests, again at a county format. The purpose behind both of these maps is to better understand if the areas where individuals are purchasing drugs are different than those where they're using drugs. Now let's jump to the left-hand side. Here we have a table where we've calculated risk of drug overdose at an individual level. Now, as you can imagine, this consists of highly sensitive information, or PII. We would recommend and enable role-based access to allow only certain users, or groups of users, the ability to view and interact with this sensitive information. This can be done throughout the platform at a dataset level or even at a report level. The specific risk score here takes into account a few different metrics, ranging from the number of drug offenses, previous convictions, total MME the individual has been prescribed, as well as many others. Now, the risk score can be altered to add other metrics or take out certain variables, depending on what is most relevant for that specific.
The other thing I would like to point out is this is not harm reduction. I think when a lot of leftists think about harm reduction, we think about, like clean needles, clean cookers, clean water, tester strips, Narcan or naloxone deployment, things like that. Throwing law enforcement is not helpful. Once somebody gets that felony record, it hurts your cause even more, because it makes it so that the person has a hard time finding a place to live or rent. They have a hard time finding a job. It does more damage than it does good, and we're still continuing to treat something like opiate use disorder as a criminality. So it's creating criminalities and punishment and throwing law enforcement at a problem rather than coming at it from a more humanitarian perspective, I suppose. But that's not harm reduction. This is, like I said, police state type stuff. And remember, this goes this crosses state line, and all law enforcement agencies have access to this. I think it's funny that they have the little justice symbol up there, because again, this doesn't seem like freedom. This isn't something that I would perceive as due process and justice, and a total invasion of privacy. That they have access to your medical records, the pharmacy you go to, what medications you've been prescribed, whether you've bought it with cash or debit or credit. Because if you buy your medications in cash, they red flag that as drug-seeking behavior, if you didn't know.
Specific state, municipality, or country. The model to create these risk scores is created within SAS and can be automized to output results as the data is updated. Let's move to the bar line chart below. I have two bar line charts here, one for strict count and one that takes into account the population, and is standardized per 100,000 people. Looking at this chart, I can see the orange line is the number of drug-related arrests per 100,000, and the blue bars are the number of fatal overdoses. As you can see in Atlanta County, there are many more overdose deaths than arrests. The opposite is true for some other counties, like Monmouth County here. This small insight helps policymakers better tailor their approaches for different parts of the state. One of the counties may need more treatment centers and naloxone kits, whereas the other may need more law enforcement. Now on the right-hand side, we've once again risk scored, but now for providers, and we've put them into 5 different risk groups, which are the bars. The yellow line shows the risk score. The risk score here can take into account metrics such as the number of patients that have overdosed under the provider's care, and the number of MMEs the provider has prescribed as compared to others in their specialty. Again, this is something that is highly customizable for any region, and we would work with local domain experts and incorporate their input into this model. The risk scores so far have been at a provider or individual basis. However, identifying hotspots and knowing where to focus efforts, especially with low resources, is another key insight. Let's go back to the map and focus on Essex County and drill into a zip code level view. Here, I can see the top few zip codes by both risk score as well as fatal overdoses and fatal overdoses per 1 million. So far, everything we've looked at is from a high-level situational awareness perspective. This approach can be taken for not only this opioid use case, but many others. For instance, the current COVID-19 pandemic.
Many others, indeed. And this is my concern, is that let's say that you're a woman in Texas that wants an abortion, and you go to a state where it's legal, coming from a state where it's illegal. And, some of the legislation, to my understanding, is that they want citizens to be a whistleblower if they're going to other states to access this. And this includes like HRT, reassignment surgery, and puberty blockers as well. Well, they can access all this information with this RxSAS program, and it does cross state lines. So, yeah.
It's important to understand where the problem is. However, this will take us only so far. So let's go back and investigate further at an individual perspective and see what actions we can take on this data. I'm back on my main dashboard page, and focusing on this table here, I can see an individual with an obviously high risk score. I'll double-click to take me to the individual scorecard page. Now, the scorecard gives me a lot of information about this individual, including their previous offenses, whether or not they went to jail, and if they were drug dependent at the time. Again, this is a page with very sensitive information, and we would assure that only certain individuals have access to it. Now, I would like to know more about John Doe, so I'm going to jump into our investigative piece of the platform by double-clicking and linking to Visual Investigator.
I have a feeling John Doe is an actual person, and Yeah, I'm going to reiterate that, this is something that all law enforcement agencies have access to.
The investigative side of this platform will allow me to investigate John Doe and any involvements that he's had, as listed down here. This takes into account multiple data sources and multiple data entries. However, this is all done through entity resolution behind the scenes, so I'm not actually making any connections. It looks like there's an open burglary investigation. So I'll go ahead and open that involvement and see some basic information about this entity. Here I can see that the dwelling was burgled and prescription drugs were taken from the medicine cabinet. This happened back in March of 2019. I'd like a better picture about John Doe, so let me go back and open up a network view in a new analyst project. The network view will give me a better understanding of all of the entities that John Doe is connected with. Although these entities may come from disparate data sources, SAS is able to connect them. So I'll go ahead and expand these links one level. I'm not manually drawing any of the lines here. Again, it's the entity resolution done in the backend. Here I can see that John Doe is connected to multiple prescriptions, some arrests, and some naloxone deployments. I'd like to know more about the Vicodin and oxycodone prescriptions, so I'll expand these nodes one level. I'll start with the Vicodin. Doing so, I can see that all 3 prescriptions come from the same doctor and same pharmacy. In other cases, we have seen multiple prescriptions from multiple doctors, which have been indicative of doctor shopping. While investigating providers, we found cases where prescriptions were always sent to a specific pharmacy. This was an initial clue to understanding that the doctor was colluding with the pharmacy, and further investigation was needed.
And see, that's an assumption, and that's the problem I have with using AI and data sources, is that you don't get the subtle nuances. Like, maybe he went to that pharmacy because that was the closest pharmacy to him, or the pharmacy that he's been going to for years, or whatever. It may have nothing to do with the pharmacy colluding with anyone, or pill milling, or anything like that. And I do have evidence that the majority of chronic pain patients do not take the same path as this gentleman here. That this is a rare. That this is rare. It's like only 2% do this. It's not very common, actually, that chronic pain patients that have been on long-term opioid therapy take the same route. It's not that common, actually. And like I said, I have a conversation where with somebody where we talk about the statistics on that, and I'll go over that later. But keep in mind, this is a dashboard that law enforcement agencies have access to, and there you go. It's like the not just your criminal history, but your medical records as well, and what medications are prescribed to you, what pharmacy you had them filled at, whether you use cash or credit, the doctor that prescribed them, every time you've had a naloxone or Narcan administered to you. And the thing is like some states are different on this, but like you can get in trouble for going to a hospital for overdosing. And in some states, a person who takes you to the hospital for overdosing can even get in trouble. And that's what I mean. That's not harm reduction. Turning people into criminals for trying to save someone's life. And I mean, do you really feel? You have to ask yourself: do you really feel comfortable that law enforcement agencies can look at your medical information?
In a similar way, alert.
And this is what I mean is like if HRT and gender reassignment surgeries and puberty blockers and things like that are illegal, if you go to other states and everything, well, like I said, this goes across state lines, so they can use what was essentially developed for chronic pain patients and opioid use and stuff like that. This could be easily used to say, well, okay, it's illegal in this state to do HRT. Well, look, they went to this doctor in this state, had HRT prescribed to them, they picked it up at this pharmacy, they used cash, not credit or debit, and this is the doctor, the pharmacy, the medication. Now they're back in our state, we can arrest them. Same thing with abortions, they can do this with easily.
Tips on high-risk scored pharmacies can help uncover pill mills through similar types of investigations. Back to John Doe, I'm seeing many other types of entities, including arrest and naloxone administrations. I'm curious and want to know more about the timeline here, so let's take a look at that by opening the time slider. I'll start at the beginning, which is back in December of 2018. As I scroll through this timeline, we'll see the entities pop up in chronological order. So we see that first was the Vicodin prescription, followed by oxycodone, and the second oxycodone script the next month. Continuing to scroll, I'll start to see in March that there was a possession of prescription opioids. Arrest for John Doe. Continuing to scroll, I see that burglary entry where he was the suspect, as well as a loitering charge, and then a naloxone deployment, followed by an assault, followed by a second naloxone deployment. I'll continue scrolling here, and we'll see that there was a third.
Notice how it has key point locations tracked, like there in the right-hand corner.
Naloxone deployment just a few days later, and finally a drugs overdose charge, and he has passed away according to the toxicology report. Now, all of these insights and any notes can be saved as part of an ongoing investigation. The platform itself allows for alerts on different entities, perhaps in this case, risk scores on patients, providers, and prescribers, as well as assigning tasks in a workflow to claim, investigate, and escalate cases. Throughout this demo, we've tried...
So, yeah, that's RxSAS, and that's what law enforcement agencies have access to, is basically your medical records. The doctors you see, the medications they prescribe, the pharmacies you pick them up, how you paid for the medication. And, you know, this does a huge... This is why chronic pain patients get abandoned. It's like, no wonder doctors won't prescribe, because, you know, they could pop up on our PDMP or this RxSAS software program that the law enforcement officers have. But when you start talking about other issues, you know, like LGBTQ rights and women's rights and stuff like that, like I said, you have these red states with laws and stuff in place where they go out of state to get HRT or reassignment surgery or an abortion. Well, they can hop on here. Like, you don't need any snitch to turn you in that state to say, like, hey, they went out of state to get this done. They can access it through this portal and get that information. And you're talking about, you know, parents having their kids taken away from them for abuse because of puberty blockers for trans youth. You have people who are seeking HRT or reassignment surgery. Again, you don't need a snitch to tell the local law enforcement if they went out of state. They can access what doctor you went to, where you picked up your HRT or puberty blockers, whatever, what pharmacy you went to, how you paid. Or let's say you go out of state for an abortion. Again, they can look up the doctor that did the abortion, any medications that were prescribed afterwards, what pharmacy you picked them up at. This is what law enforcement officers, the police, the state troopers, the DOJ, this is what they have access to. And, I mean, are we comfortable with that? Now, I want to go, I will leave the link to this in the description. Like I said, there's 3 links I'll leave to some investigative journalists revolving around this subject matter as well. Now I would like to talk about the actual statistics on chronic pain patients going to the streets and using illicit substances. But as I was saying, in regards to the RxSAS, I also don't think that it is a doctor's job to be a whistleblower for the DOJ or the police. I don't think that that's their job. Their job is to treat your medical concerns. I also don't think it's the job of a doctor for what a patient does with their medication, especially outside of the clinic. I think there needs to be a level of personal accountability or responsibility on the patient's end. I just don't see how it's the doctor's responsibility if you take your medications irresponsibly or don't follow their directions or advice. But on the proof of the chronic pain patients not being the big problem of illicit opiate consumption, this is Dr. Michael Chapman, and if you don't know who he is a psychologist that specializes in studying pain. He runs a medical pain journal. And he is not known for being very pro-opiate medication. He states himself that he is neither pro or anti-opiate, that he's kind of a fence sitter. But he does love his spinal stimulators and does love to talk about that. He is self-reported and self-proclaimed to be a fan of what's called multimodal care. And so I think this is a reliable source when he says this. This is a guy that just studies and data analytics all the time. He says, my suspicion is that the cartels are profiting only minimally from the war on prescription opioids. Oh, make no mistake, this is a prohibition. And it's like we never learn from prohibitions. And, we love to keep criminalizing people, infringing on civil rights, liberties, and freedoms. And, with this, it's like, well, this could be treated in a different way. We don't have to criminalize people, but no, let's just throw law enforcement at it and turn doctors into informants. And it's that which is not harm reduction. That's not... I don't think any leftist had in mind that harm reduction was let's turn doctors into informants and put more people in the into the profitability of the prison system and what it does and the profit of creating criminals. But he says there's so much publicity about the illicit fentanyl crisis and associated mortality that few chronic pain patients are hitting the streets. We'll never know exactly how many are doing so. And my response to that was this. The media keeps framing it like we, chronic pain patients, are to blame. If what you say is true, then they are lying and scapegoating chronic pain patients and screwing us for no rational or logical reason. Yet, we all probably have quote-unquote drug-seeking behavior or OUD or SUD in our medical record, even if we do not have those things. And he responded later by saying that no one in his circle, which he works with a lot of people from medical universities across the United States, he says nobody that he associates with sees chronic pain patients in this light. I discussed this with another chronic pain patient in advocacy, and they brought I brought up that I wanted to know if there were any trans people in the chronic and specifically in Don't Punish Pain or the Doctor Patient Forum. The people that we associate with, if there was anyone that worked with us that was trans. I said I want to know, is getting their pain treated easier or harder than getting HRT or gender reassignment surgery, especially in right-wing states? It seems not only chronic pain patients the government is being intrusive on, but it's trans people as well. And so I plan on tweeting something out to Disability Twitter to see how many trans people are chronic pain patients as well, because I want to know, especially in right-wing states, I want to know if they're going to try, basically I want to know if they're going to be implementing the RxSAS on HRT reassignment surgery. And I'm even curious about the abortion too, but getting that from a trans person who's also a chronic pain patient and knowing the difference between getting HRT or gender reassignment surgery or puberty blockers versus getting medications or even getting medical care at all anymore as a chronic pain patient, what are they like in comparison, or both stacked together? And this person, and I'll get the link that is showing up in this picture and I'll put it in the description. They responded, "It never ends. Now I need to see what the status of this bill is," shaking my damn head. And this is a screenshot here of the bill, the McKenzie has expected the development of a national prescription safety alert system, RxSAS. And gonna move to the next slide here. And she has highlighted for me the RxSAS would include all prescriptions, all pharmacies, including attempts to fill prescriptions that are rejected and cash transactions, and would be nationwide across state lines. In this way, it would help solve the doctors and pharmacists who don't have full visibility into their patients' script patterns, thereby helping reduce inadvertent or intentional opportunities for misuse. The concept behind the RxSAS was conceived by the National Council for Prescription Drug Programs, or the NCPDP, a nonprofit organization that sets standards for processing pharmacy claims. McKenzie is part of the Health Innovation Alliance, Opioid Safety Alliance, which has been working toward making this innovation a reality. And now we're going to go on to the next slide. And it gives more on that. So and here's another link, and I will have this link in the description as well. This person finalizes by says, at the bottom, freaking Kennedy Forum, Patrick Kennedy has his hands in so many companies. So it's run by a lobbying firm, Horizon Government Affairs. I was, this is interesting. And they continue by saying, just like the no pain shit, if you don't understand, the no pain shit is a lot of doctors have taken on the perspective that pain is purely psychological, that it doesn't exist, that it's a psychological phenomenon, and that, removing the physiology behind pain, which is ridiculous because we know that there's physiology behind pain. So I don't know how you can say pain is purely psychological, except with data and health companies, they have a keen interest in keeping the narrative going. And again, here's another link that I will include in the description below. But I've said, you found evidence of what Bev, who is a part of the Doctor Patient Forum and does podcasts with Claudia Morandi, highly recommend going to the drpatientforum.com and looking at and listening to their podcasts. They give a lot of very helpful, very interesting information. What she was saying about the Narcotics score, this is scary stuff. This is police state type stuff. And they said, yep, it's sickening, and it's been done very quietly. The public has no idea. It's framed as safety. And this is why a lot of chronic pain patients have been trying to get media attention, and I've even been trying to get the attention of bigger YouTubers than myself. They may not be media attention like Vice or USA Today or CNN or MSNBC or CBS or anything like that, but, like if, let's say, TJ Kirk, the Amazing Atheist, or Walsh, or Shoe on Head, or someone like that, they would reach a wider audience than I can. And I've tried doing it before, where I've tweeted at our discussions at them repeatedly. And the idea is to get exposure, to try and make the chronic pain patient side of the story heard, because it seems that a lot of people do not understand, or are very slowly waking up to it anyway, that as a chronic pain patient, you are not guaranteed access to pain management. You are not guaranteed pain medicine. You're not guaranteed disability. You're not guaranteed even a healthcare provider. They can discharge you, and you're screwed. You're abandoned. Their CDC promised continuity of care. We've seen that that's not the case. If you ask for continuity of care, if your doctor is arrested, retires, stops prescribing, for whatever reason, their version of continuity of care is to go to the ER or urgent care, which is extremely expensive, and they're not going to treat your pain either. And my fear is that they are going to use this technology, what they've used on chronic pain patients already, and it's starting to go into psychiatric meds such as benzodiazepines and amphetamine prescriptions for people with ADHD. Is that, well, the states that have things like HRT and puberty blockers and reassignment surgery and abortions illegal could use the same system to do the exact same thing that they are already doing to us chronic pain patients. So with that, I'm going to say like, share, subscribe, and comment, and hit the bell button. Oh, I don't say that, but hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. And with that, out.